welcome to the CG Pro podcast. This is episode 34, and we have Haz Dulull with us today. I'm very excited to welcome him in a second. If you enjoy what you hear today, you can follow us at becomecgpro.com or in our Facebook group. So, episode 34, very excited to have Haz. Haz is an amazing multidisciplinary artist. He's had an incredible career going through several different types of content creation, starting out in game cinematics, moving into direction, and he's a well-known director now in the cross-media creation of a movie and a game at the same time. He's worked on some amazing projects for some big studios and companies like the BBC and Discovery, but now makes his own feature films whilst making a game at the same time. And let's talk about the Metaverse, because everyone is today. So we'll be exploring those ideas about how you can create something in those many different formats at the same time. It's brand new, and Haz is a total pioneer in this area. So yeah, Haz, welcome. Great to have you here, and feel free to fill in any gaps.
Yeah. No, you did a great job already, and I feel like this is like my second time here, right? Because we've been on a podcast together. I think was it last year or something. So it feels good to be back talking to you guys. Kind of follow up the journey. But no, you did a great job introducing me, man. You do all my PR from now on. It's all good.
For sure. Well, I try and support you in the background as much as possible, because I love what you're doing, and I think you're a real pioneer in this area. It's interesting. When I got onto the Lion King, one of my first questions was, can't we do something else with all of this stuff? Because this is all going to get thrown in the trash can, and the previs is never going to get seen by anyone. Like, can't we do something with it? Obviously, that didn't happen, but you're doing it. You're doing exactly that.
Yeah,
you're living the dream.
Definitely. I mean, previs is probably the thing that got me in real time in the first place. You know, this is like 2019. I was previs my third feature, my third live action feature, having done 2 features and a TV show like for Disney, which you can watch on Disney Plus, by the way, called Fastlane. Little plug there. I kind of was itching to do my next thing, and then the pandemic hit, and we're like, oh my god! And then we kind of wait for a few months. You're like, this isn't going to go away any sooner, and all the live action, all our actors pulled out, and financing just crippled. We're not going to spend any money. So I'm like, oh no, what do I do? And the thing about Hollywood is you gotta stay relevant, right? But the only way to stay relevant is to keep creating content, right? Directors like Ridley Scott is amazing, because they churn out a movie every year or something, and they're always in the spotlight. And so for independent filmmakers, it's extremely important to stay relevant, whether it's a short film, whether it's a feature, your next gig, announcement, you have to keep, you got to keep at it. So I'm like, okay, what do I do? Well, I'm loving Unreal Engine. I was doing all the previews for the film in Unreal Engine. We did a couple of shorts, one called Battle Suit, one called Mutant Year Zero, which was a proof of concept for a film that I pitched on. And then when it came down to me and my team thinking, what are we going to do next? We're like, why don't we just make a movie in Unreal Engine? I mean, we had such a blast doing the shorts. And by the way, why isn't anyone making long form content this way? It was a no-brainer for us. So what we decided to do was we decided October 2020 to just start putting some test sequence. We had the script, and Ed, it's like one of those scripts that you write stuff, right? And then you write stuff that is never going to be made, and you just kind of write it onto, get it out your system and shelve it one day. And so when it came to animation, my producing partner Paula was like, well, we should pick a film on our slate, or a project on our slate that kind of respects the medium, right? You don't want to do a boring drama, or just something that you can do live action in animation. Animation is such a great medium. You need to push it, right? If you look at films like Spider-Verse and so on. So we had this script that was unshootable, had physics defying, gravity bending action sequences that were I don't know how we would shoot those. We're that's what should be done in animation. And it's a really good way to push Unreal Engine storytelling. And we brought a writer on board called Stavros to kind of start writing the script with us. But we were doing that while we were modeling the characters, modeling the background. Now, we both know that's kind of unconventional, right? Because usually you have your script signed off, you get financing, and then you go and once you got financing,
don't deviate,
right? And then you do your storyboard, animatic layout, and you go through the phases. And if you want to go back, it's going to be very expensive. Someone's going to get slapped. So what we did was we just went ahead and did it, and we knew we knew who the main characters were, right? With the main protagonist, the kid and the antagonist. Those would never change. We knew the story would change as we do rewrites, so that's part of the development process. But what was great working with Stavros was he would just churn out pages really quick as we worked. But instead of me giving him notes, I would just start blocking shots out. So we would have the first mesh of the character come in, not even close to finish, like not even textured. A lot of times it was gray, but it had an Unreal Engine skeleton. We know the skeleton's never going to change. We would dare change the skeleton, right? So we had that, and I had some rough assets in place, and we just started blocking shots out. And by the end of the week, but we've only written 40 pages of script, I already had blocked out 5 minutes of the sequence in Unreal. And we started showing that to the writer, and the writer's like, this never happens to me. Usually I just hand the script over and it's like, good luck, don't mess it up, see you at the premiere kind of thing. So he was involved very heavily. And then around January, we decided, let's market test the film. Because at that point, it was me and my business partner, Paula, who run HaZimation. We were financing the project with the profits we had made from the Beyond and all other films we've made. So we market tested it. But what we did was we didn't do the usual route, which is, here's a proof of concept, here's a script, and could you give us some money to make the film? Which is usually the song and dance you do when you go into studios. We didn't do that. We just said, hey, here's 10 minutes of production footage. We're making the movie. That's 10 minutes of dailies. Psychologically, it changes completely. Now, I'm not telling everyone to do that, by the way. It's a serious big bluff, but we were making the movie in a way, and we were in pandemic. We knew, we're not going to be waiting for any longer to make this. We just went and made it, right? But what was interesting is psychologically, people's minds were different. Like the financiers were like, oh, this is happening right now. Oh no, we better but either we don't miss out or we do a pass right now, rather than string you through the hoops and go through the backwards and forwards of millions of meetings. So that was an advantage, and thanks to real time. But and then sort of as we went along, Epic then saw the 10 minutes footage, and Epic's like, this looks cool. Do you want some help? And we're like, yeah, we do. And we applied for a mega grant, and it wasn't easy. FYI, everyone listening, it's not easy to get a mega grant, just so you know. But we went through the process, and the London team, the Epic London team, were very supportive, and they knew what we were doing. We weren't just making a movie; we were actually developing a bunch of tools. So here's the thing: we did this in Unreal Engine 426. The only time we updated was to go to 426.2, and that was it. So even 2 weeks ago, we did the DCP for the film, the digital cinema projection file, right? That was rendered 426.2, all those frames. We didn't upgrade to 5 or 427, right?
No.
Don't do it mid-production.
No, definitely. Golden rule, yeah. Although I bet you wanted to.
So tempted, but you know what? Thank God we didn't, because we had built a bunch of tools. A lot of the tools was to give me as a director the ability to go in every single shot and block it out, but also adjust eye lines. So our workflow essentially was... we did motion capture because we're not traditional animators. So we knew we had to get good motion. So we use XNs for our inertia bodysuit. We also end up using Move AI, which is the
cool.
AI, which is very good.
Video-based mocap. Yeah, for anyone that doesn't know.
We were one of the first early adopters. So it was very beta what we were using. And the guys, Timo and the team over at Move AI are based in the UK. So, they came and helped us in the shoot and stuff. And we did all of that. And then we used Reillusion iClone to do all the facial expressions, right? Once we had all that, we then created a system in Sequencer. So we had the first layer, which is the body mocap. We broke everything up, by the way. So we had a layer for the face, a layer for the mouth, a layer for the hands so that we can use Manus Manus gloves for the hands. But also sometimes in Reillusion, we would use the gesture plugin to do additional hands. So we had a lot of ways of doing so. It means that we can bring various artists to do different things and ways to change things on the fly. And then what we end up doing is building additional controls on top of that. This is before Control Rig, by the way. We built these additional controls to allow us to adjust eyeline, because I just knew we do the mocap, but the eyeline would never be perfectly synced, right? Yeah. And I wanted to change things, or your skeleton is perfect, but when you put a character with big arms or a big gun, it's going to have all this intersection. So we wanted tools that allow me as a director to do it, and Dre, my head of CG, to do it, and all my other team, people like Mark Cheng, to go off and do it as well. Our team was very small. We started off with 3, went up to 5, and I think at peak we were about maybe 8 or 9, and everyone was generalists, right? Everyone, there was no specialists. The only specialists we had were Gabriella, Alex Kong, and Ace Raoul, always blanked out there. Ace Raoul, and they are specialists in mocap. Gabriella and Alex Kong, in particularly, they were more than doing mocap. They were doing mocap. They're doing all the cleanup. They're doing applying it to the rig for us. So they're like technical animators as well at the same time. And it was amazing. You know, we learned, the whole project was learning. That's how we. So basically, long and short, it's how we got an Epic Mega Grant, because we were building all those tools. Yeah.
Right. You were doing something that, and here's a hint for anyone applying for a mega grant, I guess, in that, unpacking that, is if you could do something that helps improve the tool or the community, that's the thing that they really tend to like in doing that.
Definitely. And show those behind the scenes. Like, you know, you may say I'm quite prolific online. Like, you know, I see Jonathan on there, Jonathan Winbush. Hey, I mean, I kind of borrowed a lot of elements the way Jonathan does his videos and the way he's constantly promoting. It works. You know, you want to get your audience engaged right at the start. And the best way to engage them is showing them behind the scenes, showing them stuff, how things are done. You know, you don't need to give away the plot of your movie, but to show some behind the scenes of Move AI being used and how that's being put into, it's a great way to give back to community. And because of that, you know, when I went to Sparks, so we had the premiere, the US premiere or US Canada premiere for the movie at the Oscar accredited festival Sparks last week in Vancouver. And most of the people I bumped into were like, yeah, we've been following your project for like a year and a half, and then we've seen all the posts on LinkedIn. So when we saw that, you know, it's at Sparks, we thought we'll come. You know, I was like, oh my God, like one of this guy called Hans, who actually does a lot of re-illusion work, goes, yeah, man, I follow you on the forums. So the community building does work, I have to say. And that's the biggest thing I tell everyone is just share online, because people will follow you.
That's a really cool point. And I think often people are nervous to do that because there's that other part where you want to like take care of the baby while it's small, and not like, you know, people can be afraid to share with something that's not finished or complete. They feel like they're going to be judged on an incomplete piece of work. Even working in commercials for years, the producer wanted you to basically finish before they showed the client, and you always wanted to show them roughs because it was tons of work to finish it. Like, but any advice for people to encourage them to do that, or maybe even certain places where you wouldn't do that?
Yeah, you know, here's the thing. From day one, we knew that this movie was going to be made on a very limited budget, very limited resources. You know, everyone was paid. Obviously, we didn't want everyone to work for free because it's a commercial movie. It's not like making a short. This is a film that's going to go out. So everyone got paid. But because everyone was getting paid on the budget, we had to be very smart on how we use our time. We don't want to be animating shots that's just going to go straight into the bin, right? So we set a rule from day one, like on the whiteboard, and that is progression over perfection. That's the rule. So we got a shot with two people having a conversation. Don't worry about the background. Don't worry about, as long as there's a chair and table and props in front, who cares that the tree isn't in the background? Who cares if the door isn't there? Just get the shot in the edit, get it in the edit, start putting sequences together. Once everyone got into that, oh my God, we were just churning shots out. We got to a point where we were like, we can make editorial changes and it wouldn't affect us that bad. And we can make changes in real time. Right. So that's the other thing. Embrace the nature of real time. You know, real time doesn't just mean, oh, you've got stuff happening in real time, that you can make changes in real time. And what that means is we started doing testing. So Paula Crickard, my business partner, she's like currently the post producer on Expendables 4, right? And she's like all about test it out. We tested the 10 minutes. We did the same thing. So we did screen testing. A lot of our screen testing didn't have finished shots. Doesn't matter. We wanted to test how the story is going, how the flow is going. And we got incredible feedback. You know, Epic, we gave a lot of stuff to Epic to look at and feedback on. Re-illusion, the same thing as well. And Re-illusion, by the way, Re-illusion gave us a pitch and produce grant as well. When they started seeing dailies, by the way. This wasn't like, oh, we applied for it before the film. This was like halfway through the film, you know, Enoch, who's really amazing over at Re-illusion, said, hey, you know, we have a pitch and produce program. You just have to like do some PR and marketing, show a lot of behind the scenes. I'm like, hell yeah. So they were very supportive as well. And again, here's the thing. I get this question all the time, Ed. And the question I get is, how do I get tech sponsorship? I want to get some free kit. I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's not hard to reach out to. Most of these people are very accessible on LinkedIn, but what are you going to do in return? Right? You don't just take free kit for the sake of it. Go do something in return, right? You know, people like Jonathan do amazing community videos. Like, oh my God, priceless. What do I do as a filmmaker?
Yeah, they're great.
So you got to show behind the scenes. You got to keep the community engaged, showing how you're pushing the tools, how you're breaking the tools often as well. Like a lot of time we're doing stuff in Unreal, we're breaking it, right? So once you get in that mentality, your traditional filmmaking way completely goes out the window. I mean, traditional still stays the same in terms of storytelling. You need to have a good first act, second act, third act, and all of that stuff. But in terms of how you make it, you can change the game massively.
Right. Yeah, a lot. Again, a lot to unpack there. Another good piece of advice for anyone looking for mega grants in there as well, for or grants of any kind. People want to see that you're already on the path. You're already doing it. You're going to do it anyway, and you just want a bit of extra help. That's the right approach. Yeah. Don't go to them with a completely unstarted idea that you would like to do. Start it. And then, and so you're talking about a lot about community here and community-driven development. And the more that you share, the more you attract those other people, which seems to be what you're doing
recruitment. Even recruitment. That's how we got Gabriella. Like Gabriella, was seeing the stuff that I was posting on like the Facebook group, the virtual production Facebook group, and I was seeing all the amazing stuff that she was posting. I'm like, and then one day we're just like, hey, we should be friends and work together. Kind of like that scene in like 21 Jump Street. Let's be friends. And she was amazing. Like, now she's like, I can't even get her to work on my project. She's so busy doing a million things. But yeah, it was amazing. And again, we some of the other artists that came on board just because they saw the work we were doing, and there was a genuine passion for doing that genre of work, which is, we're making an adult animated film here, akin to Akira. So who doesn't want to be part of that? And it's an Unreal. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's super exciting to see what you guys are doing, and I'm interested to see the way that you're doing it, the way that you're bringing community in, the way you're sharing so much. And I know that, like, thinking back to Lord of the Rings, I guess, had that blog, that film blog, whilst they were making a couple of them at least, they would start sharing little bits of behind the scenes. It was a bit more curated, that kind of thing, but really, really cool to help people understand like how this is done. And it's a very unique time. This wouldn't have been possible even a few years ago to have a team that small make a feature film. So that, I just want to put a spotlight on that as well for a second. That's a very small team to make a feature film. And we're not burnt out yet. Right. Oh, well done. Yeah, I think it's great for people to be able to see that and hear about it, because a lot of people are getting excited, from people who've been in the industry for a long time to people that haven't been in it at all, and it's really inspiring to see how possible this is and how accessible it is.
It is. You know what? Sorry, I was going to say, Ed, it's cool that we were a small team, and we did like, every single shot is animated. It's a 95-minute movie, 4K HDR graded, if I might say so. But at the same time, there are certain qualities every member of the team's got to have. They don't have to be crazy or anything like that, but you've got to have the drive and tenacity to see it through. Like, I speak to a lot of filmmaker friends of mine, like amazing filmmaker friends of mine, who are afraid to dive into the Unreal Engine world. They're like, oh my God, that's like a lot of work. I'm like, but when you shoot a live action film, you have to wake up at 5 a.m. to get there for 6:30 call time. You have to do your prep. There's just as much work doing live action than there is doing Unreal Engine work. It's just different type of work. And the storytelling, regardless if you're doing Unreal Engine, C4D, paper animation, stop motion, regardless what your medium is, the storytelling is always going to be the same. You need to have good characters of heart, good plot, good story, clear vision of what the story is, but also, you've got to be able to tell that story in any medium, right? And that's the thing. If you could tell that story in any medium, then it's going to work. And now the medium's there to support that story and push it. In our case, that medium was Unreal Engine. Right.
Yeah. Then, so I wanted to ask you what are some qualities that you look for in people that you want to work with, or that people can culture in themselves if they want to do this type of work?
Yeah, the first question I ask them, have you seen Akira? If they're like, what? I'm like, sorry. No, I'm kidding. No, that's not true. That's not true. No. Actually, there's a bit of truth in that, because for me, when I'm looking for quality in people, I'm looking at a person. Like, if they've reached out to me saying, hey, I'm an Unreal Engine artist, or a generalist, and I would like to work on it, I already know that they know how to use Unreal. I already know that they're an artist. So for me, the conversation, I don't even like using the word interview. The conversation is like, can we get on? Can we gel? Can we collaborate? right? Are we open to throwing ideas out? And so, I look for people that takes initiative very well. And luckily, touch wood, everyone on my team, Andrea, Mark Cheng. In fact, Mark Cheng is a good example. Mark Cheng, who also follows this, by the way. Mark Cheng, I saw on Facebook, and we had mutual friends, and he's former Nickelodeon, and he's a director. He's done some amazing short films in Unreal. And he reached out and said, listen, I'm a director, but I want to help you out as on your film. I know I'm not going to be able to direct it, but I want to help you. So I'm like, yeah, and looked at his stuff. We shared similar ideas, and slowly I started giving him shots to do. And I eventually just gave him sequences to go because we had a shorthand. And I knew he was a filmmaker by heart. He knows cameras, he knows everything. He loves storytelling. So I'm like, I'll give you the seat. And it wasn't the actions. It was all like the sequences, the drama sequences, the stuff that, that I had done master shots already that I just needed people to do loads more of. He ended up doing that. And he just like killed it, smashed it completely. But then there's other types of people I look for that are much more technical minded. They may not be so savvy on storytelling, which is okay. But for me, if I'm talking to a technical person, I like to know what nerds them out technically, and why does it nerd them out? Because then as a director or a producer, how to best make use of that person. The last thing I would ever want to do is get an artist to do something that he or she is not very good at doing, but they're doing it because they just happen to be hired, right? That's the last thing I want to do. And you see that in a lot of big studios. Like I'm sure both of us can share, like working at big visual effects companies. Sometimes you just put into something, either you're pigeonholed because you're good at roto and you'll always do rotoscoping, or you're just doing fur or groom shading or whatever it is. You just keep doing that. And maybe you don't like doing it, or maybe you have to do it because you ain't going to have a job if you don't. So I would never want to put people in that position. So I feel like we're in a world today where artists are now picking projects based on stuff that rocks their boat, as opposed to like, oh, I'm based in London, that's a job in London, I'll do it because everyone's working remotely.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's really this whole confluence of technology maturing in terms of hardware and software, and then throw in the pandemic to kind of unlock that rule that existed before, where like, no, you have to be in the studio, and everybody would just refuse that it was even possible to do it any other way. And then suddenly they had to, like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe it is within a week. It's really all of that together has really shaken this whole thing up. And we have that. There's a lot of things we can poke at the pandemic for, but we have that to thank it for, in a way that it's brought the world closer together. And I feel like this workflow is really changing the way that we work. You've already talked about this. You've said that it's not just about the fact the renders are real time, but the process is happening in real time. And that's what excites me even more than the render speed.
Dude, dailies, right? We've all been there. Like, remember dailies, Ed? Like you go into a room, everyone puts the shots on the screen, the render quick times. You have a coordinator writing notes down. Everyone gives notes, and then like the coordinator has decimate the notes out. And within a few days, the artist gets the notes, and then a few more days, the notes are addressed, right? And then like a day to process the quick time up on Shotgun or whatever software you're using. Whereas this is how we did dailies, by the way. We had Zoom. Everyone open up their Unreal Engine screen when they're talking, and we'll just go through the shots. And we'll be making tweak on the fly. So we're like, oh, just move that tree to the left, done. Okay, let's just like, get rid of that chair, done. So by the time
you just play it in the engine. You're not even rendering it out of the engine. You'll just hit play in the engine. No, I'm with you. I'm absolutely with you.
It's real time. I mean, we obviously render to get all the perfect anti-aliasing, the perfect motion blur, and some of those post-process effects. But when we're doing dailies, we turn off a lot of the post-processing anyway, because we want to see the animation, right? So we're able to make changes on the fly. So by the time we finish like our 45-minute dailies, I would say 85 to 90% of the shots have been addressed. Only the stuff that needs a lot of attention and time, like if it's like reanimate the camera or redo the shaders, then obviously that takes time. But even when we're doing dailies on my end, I'll load up on Unreal. I have sequencer because I live in sequencer, right? So as a director, my domain in Unreal is sequencer. Whereas Andrea, my head of CG, is all about the blueprints. He's all about the blueprints and the characters. And you got Sam, who's all about the lighting. And then, then you got Mark Cheng, who's also all about the cameras and the staging. So everyone's kind of like got their thing. And so I'll just go in and start tweaking cameras and stuff. And I see a new shot. We use Perforce, by the way, So we do like every day we do a synchronization, download the latest, make sure everything hooks up perfectly, and then we load it up. But yeah, our dailies are like so fun. I used to remember dailies being this like long thing. Now it's like super fun, man.
interactive dailies. There you have it, people. You can get do your notes in the dailies. Don't like wait for some coordinator to write it down wrong, and then you do it wrong.
We do love coordinators, but like in this case, we don't have any room for it. So yeah.
But they're a crucial part of the process, and producers and coordinators make this stuff work. Absolutely. But yeah, it's the really, like, I want to underscore it again. What you're saying is that the process is in real time. It from the very beginning, from the storytelling, the pre-production, the production, the dailies, the post-production, even every part of it is.
Even the poster, dude. Like, the poster that got released. We use this amazing artist called Creepy Duck Design. It's a cool name. So Creepy Duck Design. If you go to creepyduckdesign.com, you'll see all the posters. Jordan Peele, James Wan rates him as like one of the coolest like designers like on the planet kind of thing. And he's based in Ireland. Again, he just saw some of the stuff I was posting and said, hey, we should work together. I'm like, oh my God, you're like this legendary poster designer. And what we did was we rendered a bunch of like assets out of Unreal with an alpha and super high res 8K. We kind of super sampled it up and sent it over to him. And he's using all of the Unreal assets and putting it together. So he wasn't actually creating additional assets. So even the poster is done in Unreal Engine.
Nice. That's very cool. And so what's it like for you being used to it being the other way? You're used to things being offline and there being a pipeline that you have to go through.
Yeah, a lot of waiting. I think that's the thing. Look, traditionally, like even to do a poster, if you're doing live action, you got to do like what you call like they're kind of like unit press kits or something, where someone just takes those photographs of the actors on white or green, and then they'll send it to a design studio and they'll comp it, and then the agency will give a trillion feedback, and then distributors will give a trillion feedback. With this, we controlled every aspect of it because we hired an amazing designer to do what he is really good at, which is creating professional looking movie posters. All the other stuff we took care of, right? So he was like, oh my God, I've got so much to choose from. It was very rare for me. Usually I'm requesting for stuff, and he could request for stuff and we could give it to him because it's all in real time, right? But also like, the real time is great, but there is a blessing and a curse, right? The blessing, as you know, we've spoken about the blessing. The curse is you can make untold changes. Right. And this is how bad this curse is. Like, again, like 2 weeks ago, we're getting ready for the DCP. So Paula Cricard's over at the post company, processing we're doing the final mix and the grade and everything. And we did a test screening to see how it looks. And I'm like, oh my God, I can see an intersection right there. And once you see it, you can't unsee it, dude. You can't unsee it. So I'm like, I've got to change this. Now, traditionally, you're like, no, it's done. Move on. You can't go back to the visual effects company or whatever. In my case, I just went home, did the tweak, rendered it out, uploaded EXRs onto like, the shared server space. Our colorist and editorial guy, Colin, downloaded it, updated it in Resolve, and then made a DCP. That's how quick it was.
And that whole process, how long did that take to go through that?
I mean, it took me 2 minutes to make that change because it was inside. I just moved it, just used a transform and moved the characters. It was no longer intersecting. It took like about a minute to render the sequence as 4K EXRs. Another maybe 2 minutes to check it in Resolve to make sure it all lines up fine. I haven't like done anything crazy because Unreal can, when you're working in a real-time game engine, there are some weird stuff that can happen. Like your camera does weird stuff and all kinds of weird stuff, or you need enough caching. So you need to put like enough warm-up frames for particles and all of that. You got to remember to do all of that. So I would say in total it was about 10, 15 minutes by the time I uploaded it. That's how quick it was. Now, usually it would have taken 2 to 3 days to get that approved.
For sure.
There you go.
Oh, it's amazing.
You have to draw the line.
So talking about drawing the line, where do you draw the line?
I think you draw the line when you like look at the schedule and you look at the budget. You're like, okay, we need to draw a line. But also at the same time, like you've got to like step away from it as a filmmaker. The problem when I say the problem, again, the curse about being in real time, especially as a director that's been so hands-on, is you sometimes don't have time to walk away and look at the bigger picture. So what I tend to do is I tend to just like walk away, let the film do its thing, screen it to like strangers, and then come back and look at it with fresh eyes and listen to the feedback. Because a lot of the feedback we get sometimes, I'm like, oh my God, I did not think of that. I just thought it was an obvious thing. But because I'm so tunnel vision, I'm so in the process, right? I'm not waiting. Like, the thing that I do miss about traditional rendering is the waiting time. I know it's weird to say that, right? But here's the thing: when you're waiting for renders to happen, you have time to think about stuff and reflect, and think, maybe I could do things differently. Whereas when you're in real time, it's go 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 go, make changes. So yeah, it's a balancing game, I guess.
So do you have to kind of build that in if essentially you're in reaction to this kind of process, you basically would have none of that. Do you have to kind of build in thinking time or reflection time into?
Yeah, and again, it's a personality thing as well, right? You gotta, like I've got a friend Alvaro, right? That's Alvaro Garcia is doing this project called Crete, and we have this conversation quite a few times. And also my friend Arn, who's doing another project. And we're all different filmmakers in different in our own way. But we always talk about how do we find time to think about art direction, story. And I think sometimes you just got to get out of the room. I just go for a run and I'm thinking about stuff, but also have a producer, like a producing partner. Like I'm a producer on the film, and my business partner, Paula Krugard's a producer. And Paula doesn't work in Unreal. She doesn't care, but she loves the process. She understands the medium. So she'll be like, I'm going to take a look at this film, go off and do something else, like go pitch on the next project or something, and then you have a conversation about it. And I think everyone does it very differently. For me, I go and exercise, and then I come back. I'm like, oh my god, what was I thinking? No, delete. So yeah.
That's a really good tip for people, I think, as well. Like, something which worked really well for me on Lion King, again, was going for a run. Every lunchtime I went for a run, and it just helped me clear all of the stuff from the morning and then come back with fresh energy 100%. And de-stress and get any ideas that you were trying to process out. Just stop. Yeah, you need that reset.
You need that physically and mentally. More mentally, if anything, because like, making a movie, man, like any movie, whether it's live action, whether it's real time or whatever, it's blood, sweat, and tears. It's emotional. It's like, you do screen testing, you get feedback, and the thing that you thought worked doesn't work. One of the biggest things that I got told, which was a collective note, by the way, was to tone down the violence. I'm like, it's a freaking cartoon. Why do I have to tone down the violence? Have you seen Akira? But they're like, tone down the violence. So I'm like, but then what you realize is you tone down the violence, you kind of do things off screen with sound. And guess what? It's even more violent because now you don't see it. You imagine it. So like, he's got last laugh. But no, you do. It's very emotional. And like, sometimes, you're getting feedback and you're thinking, oh my God, like, am I doing the right thing? Like, this is like, we're financing this project ourselves. Yes, we've got some grants and stuff, but essentially we are the core financiers. Like, we got to make decisions that are not selfless, not all about us, but about the movie. And so you just got to step back and just ask the team, are we doing the right thing here? So it's very emotional. You need a frame of mind. It isn't making a short film is a challenge on its own, but that's that one thing. Making a movie where there is a budget and a schedule attached, you have incredible voice actors that have put in their name to the movie. There's a lot of pressure to get it done right, and the even bigger pressure is we're using a frigging game engine to make an animated film, so all eyes are on you. It's kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing it, because without you and people like you doing this kind of stuff, it wouldn't be able to prove itself as a thing, and you are proving it.
Man. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. So I've got a few questions coming through from the audience. One person's asking, how do you translate from being focused on learning the tech skills to becoming a storyteller?
Okay, that's an interesting question, because just being a storyteller is not really something you train for. I know it sounds kind of weird, but it's kind of like, so have you got it or you haven't? No, kidding. But kind of like storytelling's always been ingrained in me since I was like 8 or something, right? I'd always tell my little brothers scary stories to scare them at night, or around a campfire or something when we were on a school trip. We're always telling stories, right? Even if I'm trying to bunk off school and come up with a lie or something to tell my parents, like, I was like sick when I was really playing Street Fighter 2 in the arcades and missing out maths or something. It's a level of storytelling, right? Don't do it, kids. Don't do this stuff at home, kids. Like, go to school. But no, there's always storytelling. So I think storytelling, it's always in you if you are a storyteller. But I think your question is, how do you separate that from technical, right? And I think the technical side is this, probably the same answer I would give anyone that would ask me, how do you learn Unreal Engine? Which then that kind of answers this question, which is like, I didn't set out to learn Unreal Engine. No, I set out to learn a bunch of tasks that I could do in Unreal Engine. Okay, so when I downloaded Unreal, I made a list of a couple of things. how do you bring an asset into Unreal? How do I move a camera? How do I render it? That's like three things. How do I render it, right? And how do I do that in different angles and put it in an edit? Once I had that, I had a bunch of shots. There was no animation, just a bunch of camera shots. I'm like, ooh, what's next? How do I apply motion capture? So these are all things that are relevant to me as a filmmaker to help me tell my story. Now, an animator may have a different set of tasks. He or she may want to know, how do you rig a character? How do I use control rig to pose them? And how do I control weight and balance and all of the things and skinning to do my animation? And they'll just do that one shot. A production designer maybe have something completely different. A cinematographer may be like, how do I light the scene? How do I control the light balance? You know, how do I deal with post-processing effects? It's all very different. So the technicalities are there to help me tell my story. So that's how I balance the two. And that's how I'm able to move from storytelling to technical, or the other way around.
How would you recommend to somebody to kind of learn about storytelling better,
Sure.
I guess?
You know, there's so many ways to answer that question. I think everything is is particular to the person. I obviously grew up watching a lot of movies. Like, you know, like my dad bought Blade Runner on VHS for me when I was like 12. Great parenting. No. And I remember watching that and I was like, I have no friggin' idea what this is, but this is somehow amazing. And I went and Googled the word, well, Google went to the library and found out what replicant meant, right? And that was a hard task, trying to find what the word replicant meant at the time. And then that's got me really interested. And then as you grow older, you're like, I'm watching a lot of these really cool films like Spielberg's, like, you know, films like Indiana Jones, Star Wars, and all of that stuff, and Jurassic Park. You start to question, like, how are those things put together? And then the amazing thing happened. DVDs were released with behind the scene featurettes.
Yes.
Things like you said, Lord of the Rings. The Matrix had an amazing one, like a 4-disc thing.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're like, okay, this is how you make it. Then you find out the way to learn storytelling isn't, well, obviously you got to read a lot of scripts and stuff, but for me, it's a feeling. What is that feeling you get when you watch a movie? And what is that feeling you get when you watch a movie that just doesn't feel right? You know, and maybe the shots are edited wrong. Maybe they're crossing the line, and maybe they're doing it on purpose to make it feel on edge. But there's several ways to learn storytelling. The best one I would say is observe, watch as many different types of movies. I know I watch Japanime, I watch all types of animation, I watch the Disney stuff, anything. Watch as many variety of movies, and you'll find sometimes there is a similar formula in all those films. There is a structure to it. It may not be the 3-act structure, but there is a structure. There is a protagonist. There is always this twist at the end. You know, especially Hollywood films, you know, when I got signed to a manager, the first thing my manager told me was, there's this amazing book called Save the Cat. Read that. I'm like, okay, read it. I'm like, oh my God, every Hollywood movie I've seen kind of follows that structure one way or another. So yeah, so read the book, Save the Cat is one answer. And the other thing is, you know, just watch a lot of movies. But you know what the big thing is? Just go and make something, man. Like, you don't need Unreal Engine to make anything, right? Just get your iPhone and start just blocking shots out. Like, if you've got a cat or a dog, shoot some footage. I know it sounds silly, but that's filmmaking because you're telling a story.
Yeah, no, it's great advice. Yeah, and I think, yeah, hopefully anyone else out there who's looking to gen up on filmmaking, go do those things. It's a nice thing. Homework, watch movies is a good piece of homework. Yeah, mentoring's another one that's I think really helpful if you have access to being able to. It's hard to get access to high level Hollywood filmmakers, but in working your way up towards that. Yeah,
a lot of it is time as well. Like, I used to think, oh my God, why are these like big name directors not giving me like time and stuff? And until you become a director, you're like, oh my God, now I know why. There's no
you get it now. Yeah. Awesome. So another question in here. What was the process of building up the environments in terms of the initial discovery of assets and layout? How real time was that, and how much was used or thrown away by the end of it? So, yeah.
Well, we definitely didn't throw anything away because, like I said, I'm spending my own money on this film. I'm not going to let anything go to waste. So what we did was, like, Andrea uses 3D Studio Max to like do kind of block out, and this is where we borrowed a lot away from the film industry and look more at the games industry. So the games industry, when you make a game level, you do something called white boxing, right? You just build a white box level just to get the gameplay going. We did a similar thing. We just kind of white box a bunch of levels. Sometimes we'll go to the marketplace. The marketplace is amazing. Just download a bunch of assets, just as placeholders. I mean, most of them we can't really use because you have to rework them to make it work and so on, but they're okay for placeholders. Once we had a good gist of it, sometimes I would just do a screenshot and I'll take it in Photoshop and just paint on top of it, so I know like they had a good base to work from. And then we just keep iterating. You know, we start from gray and we just keep iterating and iterating. But the cool thing is, no one's waiting for that environment to finish to do the shot. And we also do this thing. We have this like level stream, which we started doing sort of like halfway through production. That Andrea Tedeschi, our head of CG, was like, "We've got to find a better way of doing this where you're not locking out the entire level just to change a freaking tree when there's people out there trying to do stuff." So we did level streaming. So we broke up things like lighting and backgrounds were done as one level stream. And then we had animations and level stream, cameras and level stream. It meant that, you know, I can make tweaks and everyone could open that same file, but source control wouldn't be messed up at all.
Right. Very cool. Yeah. Excuse me. And now that they're taking that one step further with world partition and one file per actor, and being able to not be people could move one tree and somebody could move the blade of grass next to it, that down to that level.
Yeah.
It's still you know, maturing, but very, very, very cool to be able to again, coming back to the collaboration component that you're describing here, about how real time the collaboration is. The pipeline is not this big long line where you have to formally send things backwards and forwards as much.
100%.
Very cool.
It's iterative. It's very, I mean, if you know any project managers listen to here, we use an agile workflow.
Right.
The waterfall workflow is like linear. Agile means that you just do the shots and keep going back, do the shots, keep going back, do the shots, keep going back. In fact, we did the first shot October 2020, like I said earlier. And then like 2 months ago, we went back to that same shot we opened on October 2020. And we updated everything because now our characters look better, our environments look better, and it's so much quicker to change. Sometimes they just change automatically because we're linking to the same, to the same asset.
Right. Yeah. So it's more like it's borrowing from engineering, essentially making filmmaking more like engineering. Yeah.
Totally.
Super cool. Yeah. People should look up agile workflow as well. It's a good one. So someone's asking, what does your working space setup look like? Do you have like certain types of CPU, GPU, iPad for VCam, Vive, mocap?
Well, I definitely don't have mocap. I don't have mocap. That's Gabriella, Alex, and Ace to have to do all that. I mean, I do directing via the iPad, via Zoom. But no, I've got an Asus Pro Art workstation. It's pretty beefy. You know, it's got the latest at the time. It was latest. I got the NVIDIA A6000 card, and yeah, I mean, it's serious top end stuff. But here's a fact. Maybe I shouldn't say it. Oh fuck it, I'll say it. Here's a fun fact, exclusively to CG Pro. The entire movie was rendered on just that one computer. Every single shot was rendered on that one computer. Yes, everyone else worked on the levels and the Unreal Engine scenes and so on. But when it came to rendering the shots into an edit, it was all done on that one computer. So that gives you an idea of infrastructure right there. My monitors, I've got two monitors. I've got two Asus HDR monitors. I very rarely use HDR because it'll just blind you, like that movie Sunshine or something. But it's very useful when we did get the colors send over the grade dailies. We were able to switch to HDR on the monitor and watch true HDR, which was like a luxury I didn't think I have in my home. I use a Wacom Cintiq to do, which is connected to my computer to do actual work. Like, I don't really use it so much in Unreal, although we did do some projects in it. We do mainly for Photoshopping and stuff. What else? I do have it on iPad, like I said, for Zoom. I don't really do too much VCam work anymore. I did it for my bunch of other shots. You know, again, it's a personal preference, but I found it's just quicker just to animate with using the mouse. Sometimes what I did was, like at the start of the project, I did use a VCam just to record a bunch of motion, like hand motion. And sometimes I just leave my hand as it is. And it looks like my hand is static, but it's not. It's actually micro movements in there because, everyone doesn't move unless you're a statue, right? And then I would translate that into sequence and save that out as a camera shake file or something. But that's really as far as I go. What else do I have? I have a lot of retro games on my... Do you know what I do? After this, right? Well, on Facebook, I'll post a picture of my workstation, like my stuff.
Oh, cool.
And you guys can see what I'm talking about. Yeah.
No, that'd be great. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I think people are really curious, and still, even though we know we're in real time, people often thinking still of render farms and those kinds of things. No. So it's really cool to hear that. And what do you ever, talking about the camera part of that, Do you feel like having super handheld, like realistic camera is worse in stylized look, or like does it fit? Is it
It
better
depends.
or worse? Yeah.
For us, we're doing it, and our film is very, very stylized. To the
Yeah.
point that we built our own custom anime cell shader because there wasn't any.
Right.
There were post-processed filters. That is not the same as shaders. And here's the thing: you put a post-processed filter, it works for the one frame. Your camera starts to move, all the lines get thick, and everything starts breaking because it's a filter, right? It needs
Yeah.
to calculate. So we had to build our own shaders. And Drea Tetechy, again, big props go out to my head of CG, who worked so hard in getting those shaders. It was a combination of Reillusion, iClone, character creator, also character creator, coming into bridging into Unreal and then working on those shaders, working on the eyes. If you look at anime, the eyes have these big reflections. We even had to combine it with clever lighting. So it wasn't just about doing great shaders. The shaders had to work with the light, the type of lights we'd use. And then you find that we don't have uncanny valley of the way it looks because it's very stylized. But then you do get uncanny valley if the motion capture is super perfectly human.
Right.
So the first test we were doing, like Gabriella will be walking and we're like, it's cool, but why does this feel creepy?
Yeah.
Why does our stylized anime CG character look creepy? And we realized, usually anime is animated in like ones or twos. So in sequencer, we would do tricks. I would do tricks where I would kind of redo retimes or try to slow things down or create a jitter effect, which was a friggin' nightmare to do. But we kind of broke it to make it imperfect, to make it feel more natural. Kind of weird, I know. Whereas when you're doing a photo real thing, everything's got to move perfectly. Your camera's got to be handheld, which is why we decided not to go to handheld camera because it felt a bit weird. Even though with a photorealistic scene, it's perfect to do handheld. For stylized, it's all about doing things with the camera that is often traditional, like your nice framing, nice tracking shot, the dolly tracks. When the action happens, the camera's doing crazy stuff that you just couldn't do with a real camera. And I felt like we had a handheld camera, it feel a bit weird. So yeah.
Cool. I basically, that definitely answers my question. So it was an obsession on The Lion King. It had to look perfect, and we went to the ultimate nth degree to try and get real camera in every shot. But I think it's
different tone, right? I mean,
it's different, totally different look. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. It's an aesthetic choice, essentially, not just a limitation. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Awesome. Another one. How much did your animation work impact the script? Did it go back the other way?
100%, absolutely. In fact, the first script we wrote, the first 90 pages we wrote, we're like, this is it, we are done. But we were still making shots while we're writing the script, like I said earlier. And then when Stavros, our writer, watched the first half an hour of the movie we did, he was like, bro, I now get what you're doing. I'm going to go back and do a rewrite. It is, again, a luxury writers don't get, because a writer writes in he or her own mindset. The director's job is to interpret that script, to tell a story in his or her own way. Whereas here, there's an opportunity for the writer goes, oh my God, I get what you're doing now. Now I wrote a sequence where Max wakes up and looks out the window. You've done it. He wakes up, rubs his eyes, looks around, and there isn't a window. It's a door that's open, which makes way more sense. And he's like, oh my God, I'm going to rewrite that scene now because the dialogue's changed, the tone's changed. So that was good. The other thing also, what was really clever was the fact that we cast some really rock star voice actors. We were very lucky. So we got Jane Perry, who did the voice for Cyberpunk, the game, Hitman, the main character Diana in Hitman. She's the lead character in a PS5 game called Returnal. So it's kind of like voiceover rock star, kind of like heaven for video gamers. They were like, oh my God, that's the one who did the voice for this and that. And our main character Leon was voiced by someone called Dave Fenoy, who did The Walking Dead Telltale games. Ace Raoul, who worked on The Matrix. So there's a really bunch of rock stars. And so what we end up doing is because their time is so limited, because they're just doing a million things. So we recorded all of their voice dialogue as one pass. We cut it up into the edit. No animation was done. I used text cards in DaVinci Resolve to say scene 20 _ shot 10. This is the close-up of the hand, and scene 20 shot _ 20, and so on. We kind of use the visual effects numbering system as well.
Yeah,
kind of ingrained in me for some reason, and it works. It works. Yeah. And then we started animating and stuff. And then the writer will hear dialogue, And when we did a second pass, so we do like 3 or 4 rounds of voice dialogue, because it's all done remote, by the way. You know, they've got their microphone, they record, send over a WAV, I'm via Zoom hearing it. And the writer would then go and rewrite stuff, and it'll get different we call them alternatives, we do alternative takes. And then with the animation, it isn't a nightmare to go and change lip sync, because we're using this thing in Reillusion called Reillusion iClone called Lip Sync. It is magic. It's amazing. Some AI thing going on in the back, but you feed the WAV into iClone. You go to Lip Sync and it generates it. And now everyone talks differently. Like I talk really fast. Some people talk slow. And anything that's a bit off, you go in and tweak it, just moving points. Like a few seconds, I've got perfect lip sync, and then retarget it to the mouth of my character in Unreal as an FBX. Boom, it's done. So we can make changes on the fly. So animation influenced the script as well as the dialogue, and none of it was expensive or resource intensive to do.
Wow, that's so cool. Yeah, I've done lip sync animation in my past before. It takes a long time.
That's what scared me. Going into animation, I'm like, the thing that scared me was, oh my God, are we going to get lip sync right? Because that's the thing that scares me. But no, that's where Reillusion came in and rocked it with the lip sync. It was amazing.
Super cool. I want to take a minute to now ask you about the other project that this is, which is the game, or 2 other projects, with the game and the metaverse. Can you tell us a bit about how that worked as a process? Because nobody has really done it particularly, but especially doesn't know about it. How do those things fit together? Do they get done in the same time? You know, those types of questions.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I think it all started with just me wanted to have some control over a car. We're doing this car chase sequence, which is in the trailer. You see this big car chase sequence, and not come from animation. Like I can animate, but I'm not like Pixar level animator, right? And we knew suspension is very important. The way car drifts are very important. I'm like, oh God, that's a lot of keyframe animation. Like almost a lot of work. I don't know if I can do this. And then we thought, well, what if we hooked up the Xbox controller and started driving the car around, right? At least we'll get something. We'll somehow be able to record that in sequence and so on. But we didn't end up recording the sequencer, but because it's just hard to like capture game code at the time in 426. But it was a really good way to start like prevising like some car chasing so that we can then look at how things move and stuff. But it was so much fun. Well, oh my God. And then Sam Rabella, who at the time was our junior artist building assets for us, was like, oh, you know, I kind of like build game levels in my spare time. We're like, you what? Yeah, you know, we're like, okay, let's do a game jam this weekend, take a break from the film. And this was the important thing about taking breaks. We're not just doing it a game. So we built this, we took the asset of the 2 characters, the man and the kid, some bad guys, put them in a room, and did a bit of blueprint coding in a game project. And it was very rough. It was very, very rough. It's collision issues, but it was so fun to play. We're like, hang on a sec. We're making a 90-minute movie. There's only so much you can put in 90 minutes. There's so many ideas and things we wanted to do. We could never put in a 90-minute movie because it would be just overinflated or confusing. Loads of things get chopped onto the cutting floor, right? Kill your darlings kind of thing, right? So, well, this is a movie about multiverses. Video games are multi-branched. We could tell our entire multiverse project in a video game. Then we started doing it, and we started scheduling some time, like 2 days a week. Sam would work on a game, I would work on a game, Andrea would work on a game. And at one point we're like, but to make a full-on video game is a serious task. It's, in my opinion, a bigger task than making a movie. Right? So we're like, let's test the market. Let's really test the market. So we compiled the first working demo that we did, and we put it on Steam as early access demo. Disclaimer, demo. Cool. It's a demo, not a working game. It's an early access. But it was great because people downloaded it. There was a Discord channel, community, people feedbacking. Some people loved it. Some people hated it. People gave reasons why they hated it. And it was such good, valuable feedback. We're like, oh, wow. We want to make this game now because there's people loved it, and the fact that we had fun doing it. But now we know we're making a game where there's a community support in there. So definitely go to Steam, look for Rift. There's quite a few Rifts. You have to look for the right one. We'll send you a link afterwards. Download it, play it, and you kind of see what the game's about, but also kind of reflect what the movie's about. We're now making the game. That's our next focus. And we're doing it in a very episodic way. So we're doing 10 episodes, very much like Telltale. So they're 2-hour gameplay, releasing those. They're affordable for people to buy as well. We don't want to make a 70 quid game. No, we're not a AAA studio. But here's the thing. When we released it, because we made the game kind of quick with a very small team, all our assets were from the movie. And we spent a lot of time building those assets. So a lot of people were like, whoa, this game looks massive, man. It looks like a AAA game. We're like, yeah, whoa, hold on. We're not a AAA studio. We got this far because we're using the same assets from the movie that we spent time making, just so you know. So there is that double-edged sword where your game does look too good. People judge it as a AAA game and then start blasting it with like comments like, oh, it's not as good as Cyberpunk, blah, blah, blah. So, but
Sure, yeah.
it's all part of the course. Yeah.
Well, you're pioneering doing that in the first place. It was really, really cool to hear how the whole thing, you put the whole thing out to the community and involve them. I'm sure they feel like they've got agency in it. Did you have special considerations for the making of the stuff in the world for the film, knowing that you were going to make a game? Were there sort of like optimizations that you did that?
Oh yeah, hell yes, absolutely. Yeah. Like making a movie, like, I mean, you do think about polygons and being smart of your particle resources and memory resources, because even when you're making a movie, it's going to be rendered. You kind of want it to be able to work in real time. Also, what's the point, right? You may as well do it in Maya or Arnold. So the good thing is, all our characters were optimized already. And the way Unreal Engine works is you can create LODs, level of details, very, very quickly. Whereas back in the day when I worked in video games, it was a nightmare to create all the various level of details. You have to retexture them, detopologize them, and all that crazy stuff. Unreal handles LODs really, really well. So that helped us massively. Obviously, a lot of the environments, we had to trim out a lot of things to make it work. We had to be really smart of our particles. But here's a funny story. There's actually an effect that we use in the game, which Sam created using these clever blueprints and alpha, transparent, and Niagara particles. He did this really cool rift effect. I'm like, that's so freaking cool. Why isn't that in the movie? So we're not taking that and putting that into the movie. So it's not just the film makes the game kind of makes the film as well. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. So you were developing it essentially at the same time as the film, but it's coming out staged after the movie is out.
100%. The movie's coming out first. Obviously, the early access demo you can download and play and have fun and see all the crazy bugs we've got in there. Some are quite funny. But no, our next step is making the game. And here's the thing about the game. We made it a very conscious decision that this isn't the game version of the movie. You can play this game and have no idea that the movie exists. That's okay. You still will get it because it's its own little thing, right? Or you could watch the movie and not play the game and vice versa. So we made it a conscious decision not to be like a franchise game. It had to be sort of like its own thing for it to really do well.
It has to stand on its own 2 feet.
100%.
It can't be dependent on the movie, basically. 100%. Yeah. And the other project, the final project, which is the Metaverse. Component. Yeah, let's say it. Let's do it. We have to mention Metaverse on the Metaverse. Okay. At least once. Yeah.
Here's the thing. I had no intention of doing any Web3 projects. Okay, no intention at all. I mean, I've seen, and when I say no intention, not because I hate it or anything. No, by far, I just didn't have the headspace for it. Right. But this company, this esports company, reached out to us like early this year, like February time, and like, listen, man, we've seen all the behind the scenes of Rift. See, posting stuff in community does help. Yeah. We've seen some of your shorts, we've seen all your stuff, and we'd love for you to do a trailer for us. We've got this great metaverse that we're creating, esports metaverse called X Manor. We've created our own tokens and all of that. So I had to read up what tokens were, by the way. I had no freaking idea. And but we don't have anything to show. Because it's like a lot of these Web3 projects, they're great visions with great infrastructure that is going to be built, but things take time. And they need to show stuff to the world that what this metaverse is going to be. It's only so much Ready Player One you're going to show, right? Until you start showing the actual thing. So they said, can you build us a trailer? Here's the vision. I'm like, cool. And it's like directing a commercial. This is amazing. Well, we didn't tell them we did it in Unreal. We just said, we're doing an animated thing. We did the trailer. They loved it. It had a lot of press coverage, and it was on beyond.biz and a couple of like Web3 websites and so on. And then they came back and said, hey, can you do some more videos for us? I'm like, we could. It's great business. But why? They're like, well, we kind of now want to show a trailer on how we could gamify a retail experience. We want to show how tokenization works. And all these, so it's kind of like infomercials, right? We're like, yeah, sure. I mean, this is great. This kind of finance our studio. Amazing. Why? They're like, what do you mean why? And Steve Stain, who's the CEO of X-Man, is like one of our good friends now, and we're partners in this project now. But before that, it was like, why? We're like, well, you guys are pitching the future of the internet, which is Web3, but you're pitching it in a Web2 way, which is pictures and video. So multimedia, dude. Like so 90s.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, well, what do you suggest, smart Alec? I'm like, well, why don't you just build a prototype? And they're like, well, how do we do that? I'm like, well, it's funny you said that because we built that entire trailer in Unreal. They're like, really? I'm like, yeah. So we had a month, 4 weeks. We moved everything from the trailer into a game project. Same thing we did on Rift, by the way, and plugged an Xbox controller in. And all of a sudden, we're walking around the metaverse in 60 frames per second. And they're like, this is fucking amazing. And I'm like, okay, but how do we get this in the hands of people? Not everyone's going to have an A6000 graphics card on their machine. Now, not everyone's going to install friggin' Unreal Engine on their laptop, especially tech VCs, right? They're not going to do that, or tech executives. So we started
Macs.
right, or they have Mac, or they're on their iPads, right? They're on their iPads or on their phones, and they were on their iPads on their phones. They're watching the trailer on that. I'm like, oh my god, they're not going to run Unreal. So we looked at pixel streaming, and again, because it was a necessity to get this in the hands, we learned a new skill, and we got into we worked close to AWS. We got our pixel streaming up and going, and all of a sudden they're moving around in this Unreal Engine world on their phones and iPad, and instantly we're like, okay, they're like, how do we get you involved in this like much more than just doing trailers? We're like, well, why don't we just become a creative partner? So we're officially a creative partner on a Metaverse project where we're key stakeholders on the project and we control every creative element. We don't deal with blockchain. We don't deal with crypto. We don't deal with all of that engineering back-end stuff. We have an understanding of course, but we don't deal with all that stuff. That stuff is handled by the X-Mana awesome engineering team. We handle all the cool, creative gamification, the game experience, and it's been a blast. And now, like, I'm like so immersed in the metaverse creation that the difference between us and what a lot of other people are doing is that we're actually building it and we're testing it every day.
Is there any way that people can experience that currently? Is that yet to be?
Not yet, okay. But you will be very soon. Like I say, maybe February, we're going to release like a public beta for people to try. Because, like we said at the start of the call, we're always about testing. And that's one thing we made it very clear as part of our partnership is that we want to be involved in all the testing. But, we migrated to Unreal Engine 5. The pain we went through, everything was working so good. Now it looks gorgeous, obviously the lumen light and everything, and all the
it looks great, but nothing works.
Your animation, your skeletons break, your blueprints break, and so. But we had to create something that was future-proof. We can't just stay in 427 for the metaverse. The original test we did was 427, so we spent a lot of time migrating to UE5. Epic helped out a lot with the giving us some good tips and stuff. But we partnered with AWS as well. AWS being super helpful. And now, it's almost weird to think that we set up to build a film company. We end up making an animated film. And then we made a video game. And now we're responsible for building a metaverse platform. What? And that's the point. And, dude, all of this came down to one singular moment of my life. And you know what that was? There was a time where I wasn't getting enough work. Like, I've done 2 shows. Waiting for your call back for your agent. Say, hey, you got the show or not? I'm like, I'm bored. I need to do something. And I decided to learn Unreal Engine. So the tip to any directors out there, anyone who thinks they've made it to the top, always keep learning, man. If I didn't decide, I could have been that douchey director. Go, I'm not going to do that. I've got visual effects teams to do that. I've got an artist. I'm a director. I tell people what to do. I wouldn't be having this conversation with you now. So always step out your comfort zone, learn a new tool. Embrace the fear and just learn. Because if I didn't learn, I wouldn't be doing what I do today. I literally carved a career out in my filmmaking career.
Wow, that's amazing. That's very inspiring to hear. And I'm sure same for a lot of other people, just to how you do what you do, but distilled into a single thought, because there's a lot of processes that you've gone through, but it's great to hear it simplified in that way into being curious and being willing to learn and being vulnerable and sharing and being okay with that. It's super inspiring. Well, is there anything else that you want to share with the community whilst you're here? You've talked about
follow me on my social medias, like the handles are on the posts at Facebook and all the other CG Pros sites. But like, follow me. I'm usually quite responsive on like Instagram or stuff. Share your work. I want to follow you. Follow me. I'll follow you. I want to see what you guys are doing. And just follow Rift, because we are going to be doing more announcements at Rift. There are going to be some screenings happening in the States as well. So we'll put out posts. I know Epic going to help us do that as well. But just keep making stuff. What excites me is seeing what other people do. That inspires me every day. So I want to see what you guys do that are on this podcast.
Do it, people. Follow, share, and be inspired, and we'll all inspire each other. Yeah, it's one of the things I love about this new phase that we're in of content creation in general, is that how community based it is. Visual effects didn't feel like that too much. No. Yes, there was a community, but it was not like this. It was not like this kind of thing we're talking about, sharing and collaborating and doing it all in real time. It's 100%. Very cool time. Well, it's an absolute pleasure having you on. Always is. Thank you for bringing your heart and soul and your spirit, and you're sharing so much. You're very generous with your knowledge and your processes and your experience. I'm sure this has inspired a lot of people today. It has me. I look forward to being able to do it again, and we'll definitely, when your projects come out, we'll boost them and share them. And thank you. But thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Man, appreciate it. And thank you everyone for listening as well. I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you to everybody out there that's been listening today and sending us great questions. Look forward to another episode in 2 weeks, and we'll be back again soon with another great episode. Today we've been with Haz Dulull, episode 34. Thank you everybody for being here, and we'll see you soon.